Hello, welcome to our fourth installment of the end of course exam. We will be looking at modules 13 through 15, the 1950s, social change, and the civil rights movement. Lots of overlap of eras here, so always be aware that the time is moving and some different things are happening. In our study of the 1950s, we talked about the conformity and this idea of perfection of America. With the economic boom post-World War II, all the soldiers come home. We have the GI Bill of Rights that pays for education, helps pay for housing. We've got all kinds of jobs that are available to these soldiers coming home because the factories are at full capacity. They are building trucks and cars and items for the home, new appliances instead of all of the tanks and planes and weapons of war. We see this development of consumerism, the idea that the more you buy, the happier you'll be, and that this will help the United States in terms of economics as well. Lots of other topics that we talked about in the 1950s. Once again, the surface idea of everything is great and perfect and wonderful in the world, but understanding that under the surface there's a lot of these what we call underlying issues, groups that did not fully benefit from the economic boom. Into the era of the 1960s and some of what we call the era of social change. We see two presidents, John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson, who come in. Kennedy with this new idea for new activism. And instead of the New Deal under Roosevelt and the country helping you, he asks, what can you do for your country? One of the big programs that develops out of this is the Peace Corps, where people volunteer to spend time in less developed countries, helping build schools, roads, doing medical care, doing education, doing things for other people. When President Kennedy is assassinated, Lyndon Johnson takes over as from vice president. He has two major issues that he's trying to deal with. He has a very, very aggressive domestic agenda based in the Great Society plan, where he is declaring war on poverty. We see a lot of different programs. He is a very good negotiator with Congress. He is very strong growing up as a congressman. And so he is able to work with them and push through several different pieces of legislation that you can see listed there. Most importantly, the 64 Civil Rights Act and the 65 Voting Rights and Immigration Act. His biggest problem came about in terms of his foreign agenda. He had to deal with the Vietnam War and the continuing escalation of the Vietnam War. He also hurts himself in some things because after something called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where there were some different planes and things that attacked a couple of ships, he asks for a lot of broad powers for the president. Congress grants them to him, and so he gets a lot of power to send in more troops and do things more aggressively than what most presidents have constitutionally. And he really escalates or builds up our influence in that. The problem with that is the more you're fighting a war, the more expensive it is, and the more people focus on that. And it ends up being one of the problems for his domestic agenda. It kills off a lot of the benefits that he was hoping to get for those programs. Still with Vietnam a little bit, but counterculture idea, this growing from those beatniks that have started it in kind of the 1940s and into the 50s. We see a lot of people that do not want to fit into society. They're anti-conformists. Well, we've got the term the hippies that we are tending to use as well. Lots of drug use, lots of just anything that's not traditional American society or values kinds of things. Lots of this movement based off of Vietnam and the protests and the disgust of this younger generation that saw several of their friends and brothers and going over and fighting in the war. And so we see this major growth of this protest movement. There's a lot of different instances for us here in Ohio. The Kent State shootings in May of 1970 is when a lot of this comes to quite a large conflicting kind of thing, and we see a lot of things go across our country because of these shootings. Here in the state of Ohio, they closed down every college. They shut them all. because of the mass response that was going on. National Guard is sent in. The students are told that they are not allowed to have any more assemblies or anything. So what is a college kid going to do when you tell them you can't do something? They're going to do that exact thing. And so there's a lot of pleas for them to disperse and everything. Somehow, some way, the soldiers end up firing into the crowd. There's a lot of evidence that pertains to a mystery of a sound or a noise that made them think that they were being fired upon, but nothing has ever been fully confirmed there, and it's one of those difficult eras of American history where nobody knows for sure. What does end up happening is 4 students are shot and killed. Only one of them was actively protesting. The others were just merely moving from point to point in campus, going to classes. A very, very, very violent response to this across many campuses, and that's why almost, as like I said, every single college in Ohio almost was shut down in the days after this, and they each dealt with this kind of problem a little bit differently. Eventually, through the later 60s and into the 70s, we see that the counterculture kind of loses momentum. One of the phrases that I use sometimes talking about that is like, life gets in the way. Eventually, you're going to have to pay for a house, you're going to have a job, you're going to have to feed yourselves, because as great as free love and free hippiness and whatever is, eventually you're going to have to do some actual work in some way. The other piece of the puzzle that helps to cause the loss of momentum for the counterculture is the number of the people that they looked up to that were dying from drug overdoses, especially musicians and celebrities. But when you see your people that you look up to dying from all of this drug activity, it eventually has an effect on you. Okay, so civil rights era. This is probably the most important of each of these chapters in terms of the number of different things. So again, these are very brief reminders of what I'm going through, so we will not cover everything that's on this slide or everything that you need to know. The biggest core idea is that groups are fighting against segregation, separation, or improper treatments. Unequal rights, however you want to think about those kinds of things. Mostly we're going to be talking about the African American movement, and so they are fighting for integration into America's society, being brought together and treated equally. Okay? To remind you back from all the way to the beginning of our year when we talk about practices that are segregationist, Jim Crow laws, segregated schools, segregated libraries, buses, all of the public facilities, and then one that I don't have on here is disenfranchisement, or those voting restrictions, poll tax, literacy test, grandfather clause. All of those are segregationist practices, and so these leaders of this movement and these movements worked to fight against those and try to get African Americans and then the other minority groups as well full treatment and equal protections. Okay? Mostly when we talk about this movement, we concentrate on the terms nonviolence or civil disobedience, where you do not fight back against the police officers, you do not use any sort of violence or looting or rioting or anything that destroys others' property. You want to be seen as the victim, and you want to be able to build a sympathetic characteristic to yourself. So we see a lot of things that promote the idea of, we know these laws are wrong, so we're not going to obey those laws, but we're also not going to do it in a way where we break any other laws, especially with anything of violence. Some groups, however, do go against this kind of an ideal of nonviolence. In particular, some of the Black Panther movements with their phrase or slogan, ballots or bullets. They want to get the full right to vote and the ability to vote, or they're, as it says, willing to fight. A couple of other things. Probably the earliest really big key step in the civil rights movement is the huge Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas. It ordered the integration of the schools nationwide. This process took long time for that to go on, and nobody was fully sure what integration meant. Did it just mean that black students could go to school with white students, or did it mean that the populations had to be half and half, or did it have to? We weren't sure. And so there's a lot of troubles throughout the next several decades trying to figure out exactly what integration of schools meant. Some of those other civil rights groups, first of all, those three big acts that we talked about, 64 Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and then Immigration Acts, are enhancing the protections. They are adding to, being more specific than the 14th Amendment, which was passed in the end of the Civil War Reconstruction kind of era. These other groups that we've talked about followed the lead of Mahatma Gandhi in India, and then Martin Luther King and others in the African American civil rights movement, and they established a lot of new and more developed rights for their peoples as well. First group that we've got on here, women with what is called the feminist movement. Their organization is now the National Organization of Women. One of the great steps forward for women is the passage of Title IX into legislation. And this is mostly focused on education. Today, we tend to see this most visually or out in front of us in terms of access to sports. And that's why I've selected the United States women's soccer team there. They're probably the best known instance of these athletic achievements and things that women have been able to do through that. But lots of college access, lots of higher education access, and dollars provided to help that. Native Americans They had formed much earlier, but then the group AIM, American Indian Movement, becomes a very strong group that works for Native Americans' rights and trying to assure that they are being treated appropriately. And then Latinos, or these migrant farmers, some of the people that have come in from South and Central America over the years to our country, they formed the UFW, which is a farmers union, farm workers union. And so you see Cesar Chavez and others who form this movement to try to get them these full access to civil rights as well. Lots of terms to know, just like always. We've got not a comprehensive list, but pretty darn good if you can go through those and have a decent idea of what each one of them is talking about. You're going to be pretty well off. So that is our fourth installment, again, of our end of course review sessions. I hope that they are helping you in some way. Good luck, and we'll talk to you again soon.